We talked a little bit about the option to do a diversity statement on your background as from coming from an immigrant family, being an immigrant. Is that something you would be interested in doing?
I think so. I think that would be of value. And since, I think you've made it very clear of separating the stories, I think it would much be easier as well to follow. Because that was the challenge I was also seeing when I was reading the personal statement, was that I'm jumping from different topics. And I know you want to make it as smooth of a read as possible.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if you were to pick a separate main personal statement topic out of what you've shared in your draft here, what might that be?
I think as a separate personal statement, somewhere along the line of the interdisciplinary scope of somehow connecting my education with like my interest of helping people, if that makes sense. I think I went along the long route. I'm looking at my personal statement at the same time. I went the long route of like describing my undergrad. And then I touch upon a little bit of my conversations at work, right, in the casino industry.
Okay, so tell me more about those conversations specifically in the work context.
I think in work context, since I work in HR, I get a little bit more exposure of the sensitive issues that are happening on properties, anywhere from labor disputes because people feel unsafe in the workplace, to concerns about um, managers not understanding the workforce. Because you've got a lot of line level employees who, most of them are actually immigrants. Um, a good majority don't speak English, or it's not proficient enough. And then it's a challenge of working with management that doesn't also connect with them. And then you start to see things break down. I used to help them with applying for like emergency funding. They were going to get evicted or had other personal issues going on. You start to see leadership making certain decisions for them that I think with a different lens, you ask, why would you do this? And it's as simple as booking buses when it was election time and getting them to go out and vote. What communication were you sharing with these employees? Some of them are Spanish speakers. What type of relations are you having with the culinary union? They're big here in Las Vegas. Smaller things as, how are people even interacting one-on-one with the employees that are coming in to help? Sometimes it's that really subtle type of racism that exists sometimes in those settings, or it's a property president asking me like, are you a DACA student? It raises a couple of eyebrows because it's their lack of exposure, I think sometimes, and a little bit of the presumptions they already have. So I've kind of been that outlier of having to be kind of the translator, mediator in between, because I have that additional lens of I speak Spanish, I'm Hispanic, and I've been used in that sense to kind of translate things for people because they also don't understand where is the employee coming from at times because they're kind of really set in their lens, or hey, maybe we should look at these couple of organizations to include in our green fair. It can come down to even the smallest things on property where they want to share the goals of like green advantage, which is being eco-friendly, right? Because we have a property goal, we need to meet it strategically for the company. But they're not thinking of maybe other types of nonprofits that affect the different types of populations across the company. Even sometimes with internal disputes of employee relations, sometimes you kind of see how they're just speaking two different language on two different wavelengths.
Wow. And I let you speak everything there. I could have jumped in a couple of times because I think you got what you needed and we got what we needed, but I wanted to let that run because you were getting even more great material right there. And given that we are recording this conversation for YouTube and the podcast and such, one of the benefits is that you can go back and rewatch all of this and transcribe it. And this could be your personal statement. Like what you're giving me here is gold. And none of this was in your draft. You just had one throwaway line about casino executives that didn't really have any color or detail to it. But this, to me, shows that you have real exposure to labor law. You might not be a labor attorney, But
Mhm.
in your role in HR, you're coming across a lot of things that fall into perhaps a gray area, or maybe they cross the line sometimes in terms of violations, or maybe they're not technically violations, but maybe they should be. And somebody needs to be advocating for these workers. And I get the sense that you sense some injustices, and that might be part of your motivation for wanting to go to law school. And if you can show what you've been exposed to in a real world sense, that not that just you're vaguely motivated by a sense of justice due to outrages that you see in the current events in the news, like that's nice. And there are plenty of applicants like that who are justly motivated and have good reason to want to go to law school. But their reasons are not nearly as compelling as yours, because you have actual exposure, not just in the past couple of weeks since the national news has gotten this story in the headlines every day. It's about you've gotten exposure for who knows how long, weeks, months, years potentially. And you've been on the ground 8 hours a day or more, maybe getting exposed to what's going on. And so if you can talk about that with all your references to specifics, but also then maybe highlight one or two specifics in detail, this particular worker, what was going on for him? Where did they cross the line? Where did you want to do more, but you couldn't because your management, you're not one of the workers, if I'm correct on that. That's one possibility.
Yeah.
So I would be thinking about that. And that could take up your entire personal statement. Thanks for tuning into the show. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already to be notified of new episodes as I release them. And feel free to reach out if you need anything at all as you move forward with your prep. I'm happy to help however I can. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.